Hello, everyone. Welcome to our virtual book launch for our book, Get It While It's Hot, Gas Station, Roadside, and Convenience Cuisine in the U.S. South. Thank you so much to LSU Press for hosting this today, especially to Corey Calabria, Jordan Lofton, James Wilson with the marketing team, and everyone at LSU Press, especially our acquisitions editor, James Long. We are so excited to be here. Thanks to all of you for joining us. And I am Casey Kayser, one of the co-editors, and I'm joined by my co-editors today. And I am an associate professor of English at the University of Arkansas, where I also direct our medical humanities program. And I will let my co-editors introduce themselves as well.
Hey y'all, I'm Shelley Ingram. I'm a professor of English and folklore at UL in Lafayette.
And I'm Constance Bailey, Assistant Professor of African American Literature and Folklore at Georgia State University.
All right. Well, the way that we're going to kind of go about things today is we have some excerpts that are brief that we're going to read from the introduction just to kind of contextualize the book for you a little bit. Then we're going to have a kind of shorter conversation where we kind of chat with each other, and then we will open it up for Q&A. And the way that this is set up, we're not able to actually always see who is joining us today. So if you want to, especially any of our contributors, if you're here and want to let us know that, that would be great because we are so appreciative to you. A huge part of how this book actually came to fruition. So if any of our contributors are here or anyone else that just wants to let us know, feel free to, put that in the chat. And then I guess we'll get started if we're ready. Okay. So this is just kind of a section from the introduction, really where we begin. Mississippi is a place where we all converge. As this project is one that explores convergences, those of culture, place, food, and the road, we begin by thinking about our own convergences as co-editors, colleagues, and friends. We all first met in 2002 in the University of Missouri's English graduate program. At a welcome picnic, Constance walked up to Shelley and said, I heard you're from Mississippi. I'm from Mississippi too. Let's be friends. Shelley had just finished her undergraduate degree at Louisiana State University, where I would soon head to pursue my doctorate after finishing my master's degree at Mizzou. Shelley and Constance both had brief stints teaching on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and then Constance actually joined me as a faculty member in the University of Arkansas Department of English, a position she would hold for several years before assuming a new one at Georgia State. Later, my parents moved to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and I became acquainted with many of the Mississippi places Constance and Shelley had known since birth. For all of us, living in southern states and traveling between them involves stopping for food, really good food, at many Mississippi gas stations. In addition to our identities as gas station food connoisseurs, we, the editors, came to this project as literary scholars with interests in folklore, food studies, African American literature, and Southern literature. We seek to give gas station food that has fed us and so many others the serious scholarly attention it deserves. A collection which includes personal, scholarly, and ethnographic essays on the historical and social utility and import of convenience cuisine in the U.S. South. Get It While It's Hot reflects the many ways gas station and other quick service food contributes to the social and cultural identities of people and communities in the region. Southern food has long been celebrated in popular culture and texts such as recipe books and cookbooks. But as the academic field of food studies has grown, so has scholarly interest in the history and culture of food in the American South and its representation in Southern literature. Our collection contributes to these conversations, yet finds a niche not yet explored in this body of scholarship, as our focus is on the wide range of convenience food available in gas stations and roadside establishments in the U.S. South. It has felt timely too, as it's coincided with a recent photographic project on gas stations in the region. Kate Medley's Thank You, Please Come Again, How Gas Stations Feed and Fuel the American South, which came out in 2023. And actually, her beautiful photograph is on the cover of the book. And we do have an interview with her in the book as well. Her powerful but nuanced photographs capture the remarkable places, people, and food of gas stations throughout the American South. As the New York Times describes Medley's project, the book began with a journalist's curiosity, but ended up as a way for a daughter of the Deep South to make sense of the beautiful, brutal, complicated place she came from. This description of Medley's journey to capture a place simultaneously beautiful and brutal articulates well the complexities inherent in any endeavor to study the South and its food. In reflecting on this history, Medley also undertakes the important work of recovery, reminding us of the origins of so many of our cherished roadside staples. Even after the Civil Rights Act passed in 1964, and this is a quote from Medley's book, traveling in the South was a perilous undertaking for Black people. As racist attitudes persisted at many white-owned businesses, travelers of color had to exercise caution when choosing a restaurant or gas station to patronize. Because of this, Black-owned gas stations, though few and far between, served as one-stop shops for travelers, offering fuel, restroom services, and restaurant-quality food. While we abhor the systems of interlocking oppressions that created the need for establishments like Eaton's gas station in Alabama, one of only 50 Black-owned gas stations nationwide, we understand their centrality and significance in studying Southern food. As Marcy Cohen Ferris has noted, contradiction is a central theme in the history of Southern food, where the grim reality of slavery, Jim Crow segregation, extreme hunger, and disenfranchisement contrast with the pleasures and inventiveness of the region's cuisine. Throughout this book, we want to celebrate the rich history of Southern foodways, but be mindful to avoid fetishizing Southern cuisine or engaging in problematic conceptions of Southern exceptionalism, and to always acknowledge that food in the South is intimately linked to racial, ethnic, and gendered hegemony and socioeconomic inequities.
As long as we are dependent on fossil fuels and cars, there will be gas stations. And while starting a restaurant would require a kind of capital outlay and risk that many folks just can't afford, give them a stove and a fryer and a food warmer, and magical things can happen. One man told me after being asked why he liked gas station food so much, well, they just don't fry gizzards at home anymore. Ultimately, such places would not exist if it were not for the invention of the automobile and the rise of the American road trip. The disposable income generated by the New Deal, followed by the expansion of interstate highways, assured the continued increase in the number of automobiles on the road. All of these people in cars also needed to eat. However, the history of gas station food has a different origin than the gas station itself. It wasn't that food and other sundries were added to gas stations, but more that gas was added to another kind of new store, the convenience store. The popular history of the convenience store traces its origins to what was then called Southland Ice Company. In Dallas in 1927, a Southland Ice manager decided that since their store was open for more hours than most grocery stores, they should try adding food to their stock to help with income during the winter months. This move was a big success, largely because the ice stores were typically open 7 days a week, 11 hours a day. Their unique hours of operation eventually became their new name, as Southland Ice Company was rebranded as 7-Eleven. The rise of convenience stores answered the needs of an America fully invested in an automobile culture, efficiency, consistency, and of course, convenience. We see these qualities reflected in the names of contemporary stores like Quick Trip, Racetrack, and Easy Mart. One way to ensure an efficient and consistent experience is to design stores in such a way that they are easily recognizable as gas stations or convenience stores. Gas stations have a look. One of the challenges that designers of industrial spaces like gas stations have always faced is that they want the store to be unique to the brand while at the same time to look like every other gas station. When a traveler is displaced at odd hours of the day and night, finding a familiar looking store that is easily identified as a gas station might be exactly what they need. It is easy to see how standardization led to efficiency, consistency, and convenience. It's just as clear how this could lead back to a problem of placelessness. We would argue, though, that for the traveler, the bland homogeneity of gas stations can be a welcome comfort on the road. In fact, we all may have our favorite road trip foods. There is a real relief, an easing of anxieties of roadside consumptions, to quote a really standard book called The Gas Station, to be gained from knowing that we could walk into a convenience store hundreds of miles from home and find roughly the same foods in roughly the same spot. For millions of Americans, this is the food of legends, the food of road trips. At the same time, perhaps paradoxically, the road trip takes on an air of the carnivalesque, loosening the restraints normally placed around our day-to-day activities like eating. While on the road, traveling along that liminal line between where we were and where we're going, we can eat what we want without repercussion. The gas station becomes our uncanny kitchen. In it, you'll find placeless foods that put us exactly in a place on the highway. Unless, that is, you walk into the grab and go, spelled, of course, Geaux, and you taste that spicy boudin. Or you go to the H&H Chevron where the smell of fried catfish is unmistakable. These are places that, from the outside, look like a variation of the same gas station you may have seen 100 times before. But when you walk in, there is one corner, the hot food corner, that is immediately local. One of the first entrepreneurs to recognize the need for familiar yet distinctive branding was W.S. Sylvester Stuckey Sr., who started the peanut stand in Georgia in 1937 that eventually became that mid-century beacon of roadside services known as Stuckey's. We interviewed his daughter, Stephanie Stuckey, who recently brought back the family company for this volume. She says, "What made Stuckey special is that every store had a reflection of place, and a lot of that had to do with the food. So if you were at a Stuckey's in Virginia, you would get ham. You would get Virginia peanuts. If you were at a Stuckey's in South Carolina, you would get peaches. If you were in Florida, you'd get oranges. There was still the sense of place in these stores." And if there is one thread that runs through most of the essays in our collection, it's that gas station, roadside, and convenience cuisine both construct and depend upon the community, the place. Indeed, so many of our essays turn to this reciprocal relationship between the convenience stores where food is sold and the customers who patronize them, because these institutions are woven into the fabric of their communities.
Two words that recur throughout the collection are home and family, as employees and customers alike say they feel a familial connection to their gas stations and convenience stores. Scholars Jacqueline Skoll wrote that, quote, so often, so taken for granted have gas stations become in the American era of automobile dependence that they are easily accepted as part of the mundane world of the unimportant, unquote. But as this volume attests, this simply does not hold. If there is one thread that runs through most of our essays, it's that gas station, roadside, and convenience cuisine both construct and depend upon the community, as Shelley just said, in a way that cements its importance. Indeed, so many of our essays turn to this reciprocal relationship between the convenience stores where food is sold and the customers who patronize them, because these institutions are so integral to their communities. Mississippi writer Kayser Lehman, however, reflects on a different aspect of gas stations and community. In Kate Medley's book, which Casey referred to earlier, this book of photography, Thank You, Please Come Again, it opens with Kayser's essay, It Started with Junior Food Mart. Lehman shares his childhood memories of Friday night trips to the Junior Food Mart in Forest, Mississippi, where he and his grandmother and her boyfriend would relish in cuisine such as dark meat fried chicken and fried fish in a styrofoam container, tater logs, and RC Cola. Lehman recalls asking Miss Joyce, the former head cook at the Junior Food Mart, quote, if she thought of Junior Food Mart as a restaurant that served gas or a gas station that served food, to which Miss Joyce replied she thought of it as her damn job, unquote. Ms. Joyce's response reveals a familiar conundrum for Southern gas stations, or as Layman calls them, Southern restaurants that sell gas. While these spaces emphasize community, class, and regional identity for the consumer, they also reflect the material realities of the employees. And as much as we privilege our reading of these communities as resourceful and self-sustaining, we are cognizant that this industriousness is born of necessity. Yet, despite the economic factors that compel the cooks, vendors, and cashiers to do just their damn job, their imprint on Southern food spaces and neighborhoods is undeniable. From the late Arthur James Robinson, known locally as Mr. Okra, who yelled, "I got your okra," while driving a vegetable truck through New Orleans neighborhoods, to the wives of convenience store owners who cooked up batches of their specialties to sell to customers at lunch, to the food vendors who set up in the parking lots of Southern nightclubs near closing time, there is a creativity and vitality that food entrepreneurs bring to their communities. Be it friendliness, familiarity, or sarcasm, they realize their success depends on how well their audience engages with their performance. They might create a family, but they also run a business. Our collection addresses many such convergences: food, space, race, gender, economics, family, the open road, the yellow light. We discovered over the course of this project that there are many ways to engage with the food found in unconventional places. As the first collections about this topic, we make space for multiple ways of knowing gas stations, convenience stores, and roadside food stands by including personal, journalistic, oral history, and academic articles alike. The range of voices, styles, and experiences makes, we believe, a stronger book, one that reflects the diversity of thought that an engagement with food, place, and space engenders. We divide the book into three main parts that move generally from discussions of specific foods and spaces to the roles of convenience cuisine in their various communities to the complexities of food and travel, from the pantry to the community to the road. This movement from interior to exterior is not precise, as many essays could easily fit within multiple sections, but it does help us navigate the different ways that convenience stores and foods function in social and cultural spaces. We end each part with an interview with someone who is active in the convenience food scene, which includes Medley, Stuckey, and Stafford Sheridan, a gas station food critic whose videos have had quite a large impact on gas station food in the South. Finally, we give the last word to Dr. Psyche Williams Forson, whose work has inspired us and challenged us at every turn. William Forson reminds us that, quote, even though foods do not speak, they do tell stories, unquote. As is clear through each of the essays in this collection, gas station and convenience cuisine tells us valuable stories of roads and regions throughout the U.S. South for travelers and locals alike, but these spaces don't function like typical restaurants. Instead, they mark boundaries of community. They establish consistency and familiarity. They see you on your way and perhaps paradoxically invite you to pull up a chair and sit a while. So that's just a little bit of our intro. But we thought next we might ask each other a few questions because, believe it or not, you actually get pretty busy with the business of editing and compiling an essay that you don't get to talk to each other all that often. So we thought that, yeah, that we would ask a few questions. So my first question for everyone is, what was your favorite essay in the collection?
Do you want to
Okay.
start, Shelley? You start.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna say first, I don't have a favorite. They're like my children. I have no favorite. I don't have children, but I don't think I would have a favorite child if I did have kids. And so I'll say I don't have a favorite essay, but I do want to point out that there are two contributors, Kier Stulin and Mystery Harwood, who were my students at UL and who now are off doing awesome things in their own careers. And I was really excited to be able to publish their personal essays. One about they're both about so many things, but one about gas station coffee and growing up, and another about kind of movement and placement and displacement in the different places that they've lived. So, I just want to thank them both for contributing to the collection, and it was so great to work with them and everybody else too.
Yes, it is hard to choose a favorite because they all work together so nicely. But I have to say that I like Bruce Kraft's essay. I'll take $20 on pump number two and an order of chicken curry to go. Cuisine, conversation, and cultural confluence. And he writes about Punjabi Dhaba, which is an Indian restaurant in a Shell station in Hammond, Louisiana. And that was a really interesting kind of foray into learning about, or learning more about, because I had certainly seen signs and stopped in to one at least prior to reading this, but about the phenomena of the Indian dhaba, dhaba being like from the Hindi word lunchbox, which is kind of like a roadside cafe in India that popped up in response to the increasing number of Indian truckers on our highways in the United States. And so that was really cool to me to learn more about that. I also really like our literary essays. So Shelley's that looks at Sing Unburied Sing by Jesmyn Ward, as well as Bluebird by Aletta Locke, right?
Attica Locke. Attica.
Attica. I was like, as soon as I know,
Yeah.
one of my friends has a child named Aletta, and so I was like, that doesn't sound right. Um, and I really like thinking about how food and roadside cafes appear in literature. And so Shelley also examines that in her essay. Um, and then also Peter Ingrio looks at Flannery O'Connor's short story, A Good Man is Hard to Find, in addition to Sing Unburied Sing. So that has been fun. And I like the interviews too. It was really neat to talk with Stephanie Stuckey and Kate Medley about their experiences and their insight into the phenomena of roadside food. And you all spoke with Stafford Sheridan, of course.
Yeah, I mean, Stephanie Stuckey's interview gave us one of the kind of frameworks for the introduction. She's so well, she knows so much about so many things that it was a delight to talk with her and with Stafford Sheridan, where we just talked about good food in Mississippi because he's from Mississippi. He owns a restaurant there. He was like a judge at some point, right?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
Stafford was great. He was really a delight.
Yeah.
I will tell you, kind of like, I mean, there's a lot to love about all the essays, which is why you need to buy the book. But that probably two that are really near and dear to my heart. Autumn Arnett, like, they're two that I recruited. So every now and then, we will have to solicit an essay for a collection. And so Autumn Arnett's piece about let out food is just thinking about friendship and late nights at the Waffle House was really, really nostalgic for me. And then Naima Ford's essay about Southern bodegas, I think, is especially important now because this, this convenience store in Tallahassee, Florida, that she kind of profiles in the piece has since burned down about a month ago. And so, in some ways, the essay becomes this wonderful, beautiful archive and tribute to that space and the folks who work there. Hopefully, they'll be able to rebuild. I don't know that it may be too early to say because it's literally happened maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. But I thought it was just really interesting to think about Southern bodegas and that concept of this thing that we think about specifically being rooted in a particular place and how that looks kind of transported into this Southern setting. So yeah, those are two of my personal faves, but I love them all for different reasons.
Um, we we want to turn it over to you for questions, but we both have other questions to ask. I'll ask mine very quickly because I want to talk about Casey's question, I think, more. But mine, if we can just do a quick answer, I want to know what's something that you learned from our contributors from working on this project. So maybe a fact, like a fun fact, something that you learned.
So many facts. The thing I just really remembered as you were reading was about the ice house and kind of, like thinking about is something a gas station that sells food versus, a restaurant that sells gas. And so thinking about the development of the convenience store around, this ice house and needing to, hey, we need to sell food because we can't sell ice year round. And so I thought that was really, really fascinating, kind of how the convenience store originates. So that was a really cool fact that I learned.
And mine was just that 61% of gas stations are owned by immigrants. And I learned that actually from Kate Medley's book. But it just also is really interesting that even though we might think of this very traditional kind of Southern, fare, fried chicken and potato logs and all of that, that, in some places, the best Indian food around, right, is in a gas station or a truck stop. Just that we might find types of food that is unexpected.
And I'll just say one of the things that I learned while researching is that there was a survey done not too long ago in the Mississippi Delta, and they asked people where they were most confident about getting food. Like what was the place that they felt they could get food from easiest. And the gas station was number two. And number one was church. So, and that was just something that was, you think about food deserts and all of this. And I know that's something that, and I know that there's concern about gas station food is not healthy. But sometimes it is. Sometimes there's real, like there's, we also have short introductions to our sections, and so I talk about this in one of the introductions, is that what do we mean by real food, because all food gives sustenance, like all food helps you survive, but I just thought that was a really interesting idea. So Casey, maybe your question.
Sure. The question that I thought I might pose is, what was your favorite part of the project or the process?
Ooh, this is what I'm not gonna. My favorite part of the process had very little to do with the process itself. So it's like getting to be able to reconnect and see friends from grad school and being able to hop on a Zoom or have a group text. And I think we were just commiserating recently, like what will we text? What will we do once we don't have, this project to text about? So I'm sure there'll be some other travails given, like where we are in life, but we can keep the group text going. But that was my favorite part. Yeah, other
Yeah,
than
I mean, of course, that's what I'm going to say too, is just the collaborative nature of a collection like this, both collaborating with you and talking over it. I said we're going to archive our text for our papers one day whenever we're famous enough to have our papers housed somewhere. And then collaborating also with our contributors, because, getting to reconnect or getting to know people that we've worked with, this kind of intellectual process of collaboration is so important. And it's something we don't do enough of, I don't think, in this kind of humanities or work that we do. And so I've just really appreciated that.
yeah. Nick, Casey, what about you? You got to still answer.
Well, yes, of course, working with two old friends and colleagues, and as well as our contributors, working with them has been really rewarding. But can I say the food too? Like I mean, I loved having a reason to be able to have fried chicken and mashed potatoes for lunch, and just talking to people and them telling me about places to try, along my way from Arkansas to Mississippi, where my parents live, in Hattiesburg, while I was visiting them, places around Arkansas, that I didn't necessarily know about, even though I've lived here for a long time. I've found some new favorites. So the food, it's
Yes.
not always great for the waistline, but
I could say I'm going to go to the gas station and get my favorite is a press dressed crab meat po' boy. I'm going to go get a po' boy from the gas station for research. It's
right.
for research,
For
right?
research.
That was awesome. Yeah, and I asked on my hometown's Facebook. They have, Facebook community page or whatever. I just asked, where do you like to, what gas stations, like, do you like to eat and why do you like to eat there? And I got almost 200 responses, which is, and they kept coming in for weeks. People just really loved to talk about. And there was one, I don't think it makes it into the book, but he was like, you got to try the chili dogs at this place. He's like, you go down 90. It's right past the alligator farm behind the big live oak. And it was like, it was as Mississippi as it could get. And I thought that was a lot of fun. So I went past the alligator farm or something. Like if you get to the alligator farm, you've gone too far. And so I went and had a really, really great chili dog there. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, how was the chili dog? Like, did you
Very good.
Okay,
It's
great.
very good.
Yeah, that was one of my biggest probably regrets, actually. Maybe that should have been a question. I did not get a chance to, I don't know that I got a chance to go home to Natchez. That's why I'm trying to invoke it here during the process at all. And so I don't even know in our appendix, maybe for volume 2, then I can ask like on my hometown page and I can go frequent all of my favorite haunts. I mean, I did get to interview someone from home, so that was good. But I definitely didn't get a chance to try any of the wonderful gas station food in Natchez. So
Okay.
All right. Are we ready to move
I
on
think
to
we
the
are.
Q&A part? Okay, great. I think Corey's going to join us and help moderate.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thank you so much for that, Constance, Casey, and Shelley. This is a topic that is dear to my heart, and I'm really excited to talk about it with everyone today. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and in particular, I want to shout out some people who have been commenting. I think that a couple of y'all are watching the chat. So normally I say everything that's going on, but I think that y'all can see it. So I'm not going to do that, but I do want to thank April, Monica, Jenica, Paul, Stephen, and Katie and Clancy now for all making comments here. We have a couple of good questions on deck, but I do want to let everyone know that if you didn't hear or you're tuning in late, if you have a question for the editors, please just put it in the chat, and I'm going to ask it live for them. And so I'll just be moderating here. And the other thing I want to say before we start is that in the top and a pinned comment is a 40% off discount code for the book. So if you don't have the book yet, this is a great opportunity to buy it at a great price. So do that. But I do want to start with a question from you, April, but I kind of want to divide it into 2 parts. And so April asks, what is your favorite gas station food? And maybe I want to expand it a little bit and say, is there a certain food, that was like the food that was one of these things that, was an inspiration for wanting to make a book like this?
who's going first?
Go ahead.
Oh, let's see. So actually, and somewhat ironically, I don't write about gas station food in my collection. So I write about more of convenience cuisine, and it was my neighborhood candy lady, and I just thought that was such a unique phenomenon that hadn't really been written about in academia. And so she was also a wonderful hot tamale vendor, and she makes the best cinnamon rolls ever in life. She made, and her daughter continued that tradition. But if we're thinking actually about gas station food, my favorite gas station food growing up were the corn nuggets from Junior Food Mart. I don't know that I reflect on that at all in the introduction, but they were amazing. Probably still are, if such a thing still exists. And yeah, I mean, I think that's probably, yeah. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's my favorite from my childhood, and that's the thing probably that most inspired me to think about gas station food. Yeah.
We didn't have a drive-through fast food place in my hometown until 2022. And in fact, we did get a Subway when I was in high school, so that was whoo. But other than that, if we wanted to eat at home, we had to we went to a gas station. That's where we went pretty much. There were a few restaurants that came and went, but for things that were fast that weren't sit down, you had to go to a gas station. So po' boys were always what I liked to get. Still are.
Yeah, I feel like I came to the topic a little later than my co-editors, just since I grew up in Missouri, where maybe the further south you go, you might find that, but it wasn't so much a phenomena when I was young. So it was just later, I think, in my travels and living in southern states. I lived in a neighborhood in Baton Rouge that we had our neighborhood gas station, Country Corner, where we would. Um, go and get crawfish, and it was just such a big part of like that neighborhood and that community. I mean, they if we needed something, they would decide to stock it, right? Like my favorite wine, and those types of things. So that's one way in which I came to this.
All right, so I wanna ask the kind of second part of this question. But April, who asked the question, said, I love po' boys, Shelley. Um, so the second part is kind of, do y'all have any kind of general thoughts on Buc-ee's, which I mean, if I can say is like, it's like the idea of the kind of convenience gas station with the kind of, but not the actual.
Yeah, we sort of, I think, wrote half or a good part of the book before we realized, like, what are we going to do about Buc-ee's? Like, we're going to have to talk about Buc-ee's. And so we do in the introduction. And I might let Shelley kind of take over because she has a wonderful kind of Buc-ee's anecdote.
Oh, yeah. So, no one, proposed to write about Buc-ee's. So I think people were interested in other kind of facets of this food. But what's so interesting about Buc-ee's is this is my anecdote. I was in Ireland, on the east coast of Ireland, just north of Dublin, overlooking the Irish Sea. And there's this beautiful cliff, and you look out into the sea, and there's a light pole that's got all these stickers on it. And right on top, brighter than every other sticker on the light pole, is a Buc-ee's sticker. Um, and so thinking about how obviously kind of international Buc-ee's, has kind of become, just in terms of its branding, or its kind of its status as an icon. So we do talk about that a bit in the end, a little bit in the introduction, now, and I don't think I talk about it in my section. I think it's just in the introduction. But I've still never been to a Buc-ee's, so.
Well, so I will say that on the Southern Gas Station Food Instagram page, which is kind of new, and I'm still backlogged on posts, but there is a lot of Buc-ee's footage from my road trip to our book launch at the CLA convention. But there's a great video that talks about Buc-ee's is great for branding, and so you can see all of like the Buc-ee's things everywhere. They have great brisket sandwiches. As a person who has been to many Buc-ee's, but I think the thing that I can say about them that is probably true and would not do them a disservice is that you know what you're going to get, because every Buc-ee's is there's a uniformity about them that is one of the things I think that distinguishes most of the places that we're talking about in the collection, is that they're unique, right? And that they don't necessarily have this sense of this standardization. And so that's good or bad, right? If depending on how you feel about that, you know you're going to get really clean restrooms, you're going to get great brisket sandwiches at Buc-ee's, and lots of branded things with, like, if you're a fan of beavers or whatever animal it is, then Buc-ee's is for sure, the place for you. Like, yeah.
And we do talk about it, I think, in the introduction, kind of in the context of, because we do talk a lot about the road trip, the carnivalesque, right? How for some of us, this is a time outside of time. We can load up on junk food, road trip calories don't count. And I think, Buc-ee's has kind of, taken that mindset, right? To the max of like, we're going to have this special moment in the midst of, an ordinary road trip, and everything's gonna be big, and there's gonna be so much. And, so we kind of thought about Buc-ee's in terms of the carnivalesque nature of the road trip.
I want to say that if anyone from Bucky's is watching, we'd love it if you stock this book. So just get in touch. Actually, the next question here from Katie, I feel like it's somewhat related. So I do want to get into that. So Katie here says, in case you aren't seeing it, the idea of real food is fascinating, especially given the current conversation surrounding ultra-processed foods. It also brings up the idea of authenticity in relation to food. I guess my question is, could y'all talk more about that without giving too much of the intro away?
So I often teach food waste courses, and in my first class, I always say, the first class I always say we have to talk about authenticity, and I say because all food is real food, and I bring them Taco Bell, and I was like, is this authentic food? And sure enough, they'll say no, and I'll be like, really, why? And I'm like, it's Taco Bell. Is it authentic Taco Bell? And they said, well, yes, I guess. So, we have to think about authenticity as everything is authentic, is an authentic something, right? So Taco Bell is authentic Taco Bell. And it is quote unquote real food. I mean, people, live off of fast food. Is it yeah, it's complicated to get into the questions of health and what it means to be ultra processed, but the question of authenticity is something that of course we deal with a lot and all the time. And authenticity does matter and it doesn't, right? It matters when people who are producing the food care about it. I think it matters then. But when we're trying to, say I can't eat, I was talking about this with my other class recently, and one of my students said, I have friends who say they won't eat Taco Bell because it's not authentic. I'm like, why? It's delicious, and it's cheap, and it's open late. So what's the issue with that? Yeah. So everything is an authentic something. Authenticity is very often we search out authenticity for reasons that might be different than what we would like them to be, right? Authenticity often, we talk about fetishizing, right? Authenticity often becomes a way for us to consume some kind of something that we think is going to make us better in some way, right? And that can be, that can lead to problems. But it's also really important to give agency to the people whose food we are consuming, and that agency it really matters too in terms of how they think about their food and how they position their food and what they want people to do with it. Don't post a recipe for gumbo ever if your last name isn't Landry or Thibodeau and you're not from Homa, right? Don't ever post a recipe for gumbo because you will get,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I have thoughts, yeah, for sure. But yeah, the other thing I say that's very kind of similar to what Shelley has said is when I teach Southern foodways, I ask, is something, is it geographically Southern or is it culturally Southern? So I ask this a lot about beignets and etouffee, like, is this a Southern food, right? And so that's a really difficult question sometimes for students to parse out. And I'm like, well, what do we mean by Southern food, right? And so yeah, I think this question of authenticity is something you'll see kind of interspersed throughout the essays in the book. And I hope we're sort of pushing back against that. But like one of my favorite books in the world to teach is, and that I love for so many reasons, is Gloria Naylor's Mama Day. But I always get mad with Mama Day when she castigates, the poor Bernice because of, the convenience food and the Sara Lee's. And, she's like, there's all this fast food and so she connotes or sort of she connects slow food, right, with love and with quote unquote authenticity and with realness. And I'm like, hey, jobs are a thing, right? People have to work. Modernity is a reality, and we can't all be Mama Day sitting around, doing well. If you haven't read Mama Day, go read it. But right after you read, get it while it's hot. But anyway, so yeah, questions of authenticity, I think you'll see, hopefully kind of challenged or engaged at least throughout the book. So a great question.
Yeah, those are some great answers. So thank you so much for that question, Katie. We've got two questions on deck here. This one's from Christy Kayser. Christy says, do you write about or did you discover any challenges to the gas station food industry? And I might add to that, did you notice any kind of trends, like are they in decline or the opposite, are there more? And Christy asks, might we one day not have them anymore?
Well, that is a really interesting question. Kate Medley, when we interviewed her, she did her project over the course of 10 years, right? And so she actually talked about how she would return to places along her travels that she had, photographed and visited. And very often they would be closed down completely, or they no longer sold gas. It's actually really quite expensive to sell gas, right? And so she spoke at least about the sadness of some of these places being on decline. And oftentimes they exist in communities that don't have a lot of resources, right? It might be in the middle of a food desert, the only place to get a hot meal. But the proprietors of that have their own challenges with staying open. So I will say that at least Kate Medley shared that as a phenomena she encountered, but my co-editors might have some thoughts too.
Mystery Harwood's essay talks a lot, and I think in an earlier draft, this was more apparent, but the kind of almost Brigadoon-like nature of gas stations that sell food sometimes, that you'll go, you'll eat something, it's delicious, you'll try to come back a year later, and it's just something completely different, or you can't find it. And like it pops up when you need it and then it goes away, right? And then something else is in its place. So I think it's really interesting, this kind of ephemerality of it, because as we were going through our index, our editor was like looking, or our copy editor was like looking for these places, and some of them had already shut down and had to be taken off the list, right? Um, at the same time, we are still a gas dependent culture. We are still a car dependent culture, and as long as we are dependent on cars, we are going to be dependent on. We're going to have gas stations. And gas stations are going to sell food, whether it is the kind of full range of, the hot plates or the hot lunches or the meat and threes that we see, or if it's still just, beef jerky and Doritos, right? It's going to sell food. It's going to be there for as long as we have to buy gas. So there's this both ephemerality to it, but also a consistency that remains. And I think that we were at a recent conference and there was a panel that talked about we didn't get to see it, but it was a Gen Z comfort. It was like a Gen Z food. So the panel was about Gen Z food, and they talked about gas station food. Like that was one of their primary kind of comfort foods, was to go to the gas station and get snacks. So I don't know that the desire for it is going anywhere anytime soon.
And I do also wonder if, I mean, I don't know what this evolution will sort of look like, but I think as like a former EV owner, I spent a lot of time just like at the charging station, and I spent much longer at a charging station than I did a gas station. And I thought, man, it would be really nice if there was some food here. So I do wonder, if, I mean, infrastructure may not allow for stations to spring up around EV charging stations. But I mean, I just wonder like what the
It
next
will.
iteration
It will.
of, yeah,
It has to, right?
yeah, yeah. So yeah.
We've got two questions in the queue from the audience, and I've got two on my end, but we'll see if we have time to get to it. We're gonna try to get out of here by the top of the hour. So this is my way of saying that if you have a question, put it in the chat. Maybe you have time for one more. And so I'm gonna go ahead and move along to this question from Paul Lawson. Paul, thanks for asking this. So Paul kind of gives an anecdote about when families from India started buying gas station with convenience stores many years ago. He was happy that many would sell Indian food, but in his experience, few Indian-owned convenience stores do sell Indian food, and there seems to be an opportunity for immigrant-owned convenience stores to broaden travelers' palates. And that's his comment. If you have anything kind of add to that. But in general, he asks, do you see any kind of positive trends right now with convenience and gas station and roadside food?
That's a good question. And that's a hard question. Yeah, I'm not. Um, yeah, I don't know if I have a good. I mean, other than the expansion of different cuisines that we're starting to see. Some people, when I said I was going to Jackson for a conference, they're like, "Oh, you have to try." There's this great Caribbean restaurant that was in a gas station, and I never previously remembered hearing about like Caribbean. Now might have still been something that we would have reflected on as sort of a convenience sort of in the community that people didn't know about, or you kind of have to but like, oh, this is available right off the interstate, and of course the rise of the Indian dhaba. And so and I suspect sort of other, yeah, I would say I haven't done enough research. That's something I would love to do more research, and maybe someone will give me some funding to do that, right? But yeah.
In our interview with Stafford, we talked about places, and a lot of them weren't your traditional Southern food. So he talked about, getting Mexican food, and he talked about we talked a lot about this place that was near where I grew up that sold fried rice, that it was really very, very good. Like American Chinese food, and the family that owns it was actually Vietnamese, and so they had like Vietnamese spring rolls that were egg rolls, but then everyone came for the Chinese food. And the last time that I was in there, the woman behind me, just out of the blue, said, "I've heard so many things about this place, and I don't usually eat this kind of food, but I came because I wanted some," right? Just she didn't know that I was writing a book. I'm like, "Ooh, can I write that down?" And so I do think that it does. I don't think it's everywhere, obviously, but I think that it does exist. That there are these places that are selling food, even if it's not a full menu, it's a little bit of a menu, right? That even if it's just a few things on the menu that are kind of outside maybe tradition, what we would think of or what we had thought of as traditional Southern food. So I think that's happening, even if it's not widespread. But there was something else I was going to say. I kind of lost it. Maybe it'll come back to me. Casey, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say there is a place in Ozark, Arkansas called Country Express, or Mulberry actually, called Country Express, that has Indian food, but it's alongside the more American Southern, so it really kind of appeals to whatever you might want, but definitely an opportunity to expand your horizons and try new things too.
I would say this is what I was going to say. I would say that a positive trend, I think, lately that we see with something like Medley's book, there have been some moves to, there is in Louisiana and the western part of the state, one of the parish tourist boards put together a gas station like tourist guide. So it was a food trip. Like, here's the gas stations you can go up in. No, it's called No Man's Land. It's the like near the Texas border. Right here are places you can go on these highways to get. So they've kind of use it to entice tourists there. But interestingly, one of our essays says that she did this, right? She was reading all of like there are articles that talked about the best like you see in the last 5 or 6 years, a lot more attention is paid to these food spaces. But so she went to try these places in Louisiana that were on these lists, but when she was there, it was still mostly locals. So that's an interesting kind of tension between the attention that it's getting, maybe the larger attention that it's getting, but who actually still eats there, right? That these are still places for locals, which for some people would be like, well, that makes it authentic. So let's go. Let's make sure that it keeps its authenticity.
I've got two questions left in the chat, and I'm going to ask a closing question from us. So I think that's it for questions. But thank you so much for all of your feedback, and I'm excited for y'all to look at this chat later because there's a lot of love here. I'm going to start with this question from you, Monica, and it is, were there any overlaps with vernacular architecture or roadside attractions in this work? And Monica says, or produce stands, many of which count as vernacular architecture, such as, is it Pesh in Middle Georgia?
I wrote a little bit about that. Well, we talk a little bit about architecture in the introduction, not enough. That's an area that I became really interested in. Became really interested in the design element of this, and it's something that I'm kind of bringing over into my next project. I think it's kind of inspiring a little bit of my next big project that I want to do. So I became really interested in that. But yeah, there's not enough attention paid to the vernacular architecture of this. But the produce stands, we talked about it, and I went up to Jackson, Mississippi this last week at 2 weeks ago from the coast. So I went up 49, and if you've ever driven up Highway 49 in Mississippi, you know that there are produce stands all the way up that highway. And as I was driving, I think I really wish we had gotten someone. Volume 2. We are going to do a volume 2, and we already have a list of things. So Monica, right, like I'm looking forward to your essay on vernacular architecture and produce stands for volume 2.
All right, so I'm gonna ask this one last question from April, but then a little bit more. You kind of started to answer the last question that I'm gonna ask, because I do want to hear more about what y'all are working on now in volume 2. But before we get to that, April asked if y'all interviewed any truckers for this collection, and if so, were there any interesting ideas that came up?
We should have. My partner actually used to be a trucker, and it never occurred to me. So we definitely should have. But volume 2. So that will be in volume 2.
We did have an essay that was going to do that, and unfortunately it didn't couldn't get it, it didn't come to fruition. So maybe we can get them to continue that work. They were going to talk about loves. They were actually going to talk about truck stops, which is, as you can see, there are so many spaces that are still, we have so many things that we can still talk about. Yes. So we're going to put that volume 2. It's all going down on a list.
That's a good transition into my last question for y'all. But before I ask it, I do want to thank the 3 of you again for being here with us today. This has been a great combo. And I want to thank everyone one more time for tuning in, for asking questions, and for your participation. So thank you for spending your afternoon with us. We really appreciate it. So before we sign off, I want to hear either a little bit more about volume 2 or other things that are in the works that you're working on, a future project, anything maybe you'd like to plug.
I don't know that I have anything forthcoming. I am hard at work on I think I'm the only person who hasn't still done I haven't done my single authored monograph yet. So In Search of Her Mother's Folklore is the single authored monograph. That's the only thing I should be working on if anybody asks me. But I'm always working on many things, but that is the main thing. And so, yeah. But certainly follow me on Instagram for all of my, whatever projects. Yeah.
Go ahead, Casey.
No, you go ahead, Shelley. And then
I said after I got tenure, I said, or in promotion, I said I'm only going to write about ghost, weather, and the food, ghost, the weather, and food, because that's what I want to write about. So this is my most recent food. I'm working with some current and former students on an edited collection about queer ghost lore. So that should happen within the next year and a half. So that I've said it here, it has to happen. And then the next kind of big project that what I want to work with on one of my other frequent collaborators, is about the weather and place. I'm really interested in wayfinding. I've become very interested in how we find our way, and thinking about gas stations is kind of in that landscape of how we find our way around places, is where my head's at the moment. So that's what I'm working on.
Well, as I said at the beginning, I direct our medical humanities program on campus. And so I think a lot about depictions of health and illness in Southern literature. And so that, that is my second book project, is really kind of thinking about the South as an ill region, both kind of literally, but metaphorically. And then looking at the role of health and illness in Southern writers' work. And then I actually have co-edited another collection that's actually under review right now, called Illness and Disability in Southern Women's Fiction. So that's exciting. And then my interest in folklore, I also really excited to maybe combine that with some of the medical kind of spaces, thinking about pre-med or med student lore and that type of thing. So.
Well, that's all we have for today. Before we sign off, is there anything that y'all would like to say?
Thank you for being here. I actually haven't been able to see the chat, even though I'm looking. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, why I can't see the chat, but I'm excited to read through it. And thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you everyone for coming, for your questions and your enthusiasm about the book. I also cannot see anything, people or chats, so I'm excited to look over everything later. Thank you again to Corey and LSU Press as well.
Been awesome.
Yeah, thanks. The
All
same
right,
thing.
y'all. Till next time.
All right.